Hi, everyone. I'm James Protin. I'd like to give a special thank you to our sponsors for the podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. This is actually part 2 of this morning's show. And I don't know that these will be aired back to back, but just in the event that they're not, I will introduce our guests. With me to my immediate left is Becky McKenzie. Becky is a survivor and advocate working with trafficking victims in southwestern Pennsylvania. And to her left is Maggie Novotny. Maggie is the Director of Client Services for Domestic Violence Services in southwestern Pennsylvania. We've been discussing the topic of human trafficking, and of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize my man Jack down there in the co-host chair. Thanks, Jack, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
We had an eye-opening conversation here a little while ago with a couple of your colleagues, and human trafficking is something that, even though I'm a parent and a grandparent, it was not at the front of my mind when you think of all of the things that are going on in our society, particularly in this country today. So I did a little bit of research, and it is epic in proportion. I mean, it's unbelievable to me. Just some of the numbers that I found. It's among the fastest growing criminal enterprises in the world, and it's estimated that it is a $150 billion industry with approximately 40 million victims annually. Those are staggering numbers, and I'd like to start this off. And I mean, you can cite chapter and verse and numbers, and from especially from the internet, everybody knows that everything on the internet's true. So these are all real and in real time numbers. But I will apologize, and if there's anything that I do say related to that feel free to say, nah, that's not right, because the internet is notoriously not right. So one of the things when I first saw those numbers, I thought, okay, well, what does that mean to us here in southwestern Pennsylvania, feet on the ground? Again, as a father and a grandfather, what does that mean to me? Then I read further, and I discovered that Pennsylvania is among the top 10 states for a number of cases of human trafficking, particularly as it relates to child sexual abuse, pornography, and so on. Because there's other areas of trafficking, child labor and different things like that. Mm-hmm. And so that obviously got my attention, right? And we had done a show here a few weeks ago with Kelly McKenzie, the CEO of SPHS, and Joey Pagano, and we talked about addiction and recovery. And one of the things that keeps coming up related to human trafficking, especially as it relates to children, is the opioid epidemic, right? As something that is a driving force in this. So, Maggie, I'd like to start with you. Could you just give us a little bit of background on how you arrived at this career and tell us a little bit about your organization?
Yes, so I work for Domestic Violence Services of Southwestern PA. We are a tri-county agency, so we operate in Washington, Greene, and Fayette counties. Honestly, I arrived here basically out of college, and I've been doing this for about 14 years, and it wasn't something I knew I was passionate about. But when you start to work with survivors of domestic violence and you get to help them and you get to kind of see how they can move on and they grow and they make lives for themselves, you get more and more involved and more committed to kind of the cause. With the human trafficking part of it, we are part of a STOP team, a collaboration group with the STARS program and the district attorney's office, and that gave us the opportunity to kind of be part of a human trafficking task force. From there, I've learned so much, and it also gave our agency a way to assist survivors and victims of human trafficking. We are able to provide them, the services that we provide, survivors of domestic violence as well. So we're still, I'm still learning a lot about it, but
Okay.
it's been cool to
What are
be
some of those
involved.
services that you provide?
So we do have a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week hotline.
Okay.
So anyone who needs assistance, whether it be you're calling for a friend or you're calling for yourself, you can call. Somebody answers that hotline no matter what. I always like to tell people it's a live person, so you're not going to get like an automated service. It's somebody in one of our counties who's going to answer that.
Okay.
We offer empowerment counseling. Basically, it's just one-on-one counseling that kind of talks about domestic violence. It educates people on domestic violence, helps them safety plan, things even along the lines of budgeting, just to kind of help them get on their feet and
Sure.
get their own place. We have a licensed therapist on staff, so for any issues, because our staff are advocates, we're not therapists, so for anything that we think it's beyond our expertise, we can refer them to her and she will take care of them.
Okay.
We do have housing case managers, so our goal is ideally our facility is short term. We don't want people to have to stay there long. We want them to get out and get permanent housing. So our housing case managers work with them to get them on lists with public housing, with coordinated entry, which is a countywide database to get them moved up on lists
Okay.
to receive apartments. And we can also assist with funding and things like that when they do that first month's
Okay.
rent deposit.
Sure.
We have a legal advocacy department. So in that office, we assist with filing protection from abuse orders,
Okay.
sexual violence protection orders, and protection from intimidation orders. So anyone who would qualify for one of those orders would come to our office in the courthouse and they would file there.
Okay.
And then finally, we do offer emergency safe house. So again, you're fleeing this situation that's
Right.
not safe for you. We can bring you in, give you a bed, give you food, give you clothes, and we can help you set goals and hopefully, again, get you into housing.
Okay. Okay. Excellent. Excellent. And you extend, your organization extends beyond not just Washington County. You have other counties that you work in.
Yeah, Washington, Fayette, and Greene County.
Okay. Excellent.
Yes.
With how many locations?
So Washington County has a safe house, and Fayette County has a safe house. Our Greene County office is just a satellite office, so it's like a drop-in center.
Okay.
And then we each county provides the legal advocacy, so the PFAs, the SVPOs, and those orders. And then we have our administrative office, which houses our prevention team, and they're located in Brownsville. They're central to all of those
Sure.
locations.
Okay. Great. Great.
Your
Great.
safe house, is that 18 or over, or?
No, not necessarily. There's different factors. We screen people as they call, and then based off of those things, we'll determine who will qualify for services.
Okay. Excellent. Excellent. Becky, your background, what has been given to me is you are a survivor and an advocate for human trafficking. Can you tell us about your story? And you live in Allegheny County,
Yes.
and so what can you share with us? What are I want you to be comfortable. Whatever you're willing to share of your story. How we've learned about all of these things and these, from the investigation and prosecution side to therapy and advocacy. But from you lived this.
Yeah. I actually, when I was 14 and a half, I found myself on the streets of Buffalo, New York, initially homeless, and then I was offered shelter by a guy who I naively thought was just being nice, but obviously he had something else in mind and turned me basically into a commodity that he sold on the streets of Buffalo, New York, specifically in the Allentown district, which back then was the red light district.
Okay.
And that went on for a number of years. I did eventually escape. I had a couple escape attempts, one of which was not successful at all, and I got badly beaten up for that, and I still have the scars from that one. So, I mean, you do bring souvenirs, as I call them, back from the street, and one of them is the fact that my vocal cords got strangled pretty bad, so again, I apologize if my voice is going to vanish.
No apology necessary.
Anyway, yeah, so I basically spent my teens on the streets of Buffalo, New York. I got a very close appreciation for the homeless life and then very much the trafficking life. I hid that I got off the street. I did survive, very lucky. a relative, very generous, patient relative, helped me get off the street and get my life back together. But this is not something that happens overnight.
Right.
Some people, I mean, that's it. They never make it off the street, and I had friends who vanished without any idea of where they went. But I did get off the street. It took me about 10 years to rebuild my life. I basically lost the first 25 years of my life to either familial abuse or trafficking. And it's not something you completely walk away from.
Sure.
However, I did escape Buffalo. I knew I had to get out of Buffalo, and I eventually ended up here in Pittsburgh, which I love. Pittsburgh's such a great town.
It is.
Friendly people. Took me a while to warm up to other humans, but this is a great place to do that.
Absolutely. We're huggers here.
Yeah. And at first, I wanted to go back to school. I wanted to have an academic background because my undergrad, trying to do school when you're living on the street and being basically incapacitated for entire semesters doesn't really work out so well.
You know, that'd be difficult. It's an obstacle.
Yeah, it's a remarkable transcript. Unfortunately, I look at it, it's like, oh, I know what I was doing then. However, so I went back to school. I started back at Pitt and got a master's in the School of Engineering, of all places.
Really? What kind of engineering?
Bioengineering.
Really?
There was ulterior motive here is that I wanted to work in medicine.
Okay.
I wanted to. My overall motivation was I'd had all these experiences on the street. I survived them, and I figured I had two choices. One, I could live, sit in the corner and bemoan the fact that, yeah, I'd had this horrible life, or I could take those experiences and kind of turn them into, and I had no idea how I was going to do this, turn them into a useful kind of training for what I wanted to do later in life. Okay. And that's basically turning around and being an advocate for other people, especially kids who are going through this. So I had this vague idea, I'll go back to school, repair my academic transcript, and hopefully pursue medicine. Fortunately at this time, and there has to be a higher power because the timing on this was absolutely perfect. Number one, I'd gotten off the street.
Yep.
That was a miracle. Second thing is, in 1994, I met a guy, Dr. Jim Withers, physician at Mercy Hospital, who started this radical program called Operation Safety Net, which goes out on the street and basically does house calls to the homeless in Allegheny County.
Really?
Unbelievable, yeah.
Yeah. It's a radical idea, but then it's like, well, yeah, they're not going to come to a clinic. We have to go to them. So I remember I was sitting in a cube at an engineering company here. I was an engineer. And this came up on the screen. We had this very primitive news service, and I saw this article about Mercy Hospital physician goes out on the street to provide medical care to the homeless. And it hit me like a lightning bolt right then and there. It's like, my life changed instantly. Right. It was like,
that's what I need to be doing.
It's like, well, first of all, I thought, where the hell were you when I needed you?
Yeah.
And then instantly followed by, I got to do this. What am I doing here in this cube? I'm talking to a computer. I don't want to talk to a computer, even though I was good at it. So I instantly called up Mercy Hospital. So I got to talk to you. And of course, I went over there, and it was Operation Safety Net was very small at that time. And he said, what kind of medical training do you have? And I said, I don't have any, but I want to do what you're doing. And he's going like, oh, God.
Yeah.
And, another worshiper. So I went off. I said, I'll be back. I went off, got my EMT, and I came back 6 months later with my certificate and said, hey, okay, I'm ready. Put me to work. And he says, well, we're still kind of small, and I'm just using my internal medicine residence. So he got me a place at Healthcare for the Homeless, working in their Salvation Army clinics as a clinician, EMT. And it was an amazing experience. Here I am suddenly on the other side of the fence of all these people that I used to live with. And they would sit down and say, well, I got to tell you my story. I know it's going to sound strange, but here's what's been going on in my life. And I'm going like, yeah.
You get it.
Yeah,
right,
I get it.
Right.
Yeah. And did you do this? He said, oh, Well, this went on. I continued my medical, pre-medical education. I got a Schweitzer Fellowship from the Albert Schweitzer Fellowship in Pittsburgh, which allowed me to work on the street. I actually got paid. I was getting paid for doing this too. Got money on top of the privilege of working with a population that I knew a lot about. And that went really well, and I stayed on after that, my fellowship year, to be a mentor to incoming fellows. My master's work finished, I got accepted to the PhD program in bioengineering and immediately changed my focus to clinical neurophysiology with the thought of predatory behavior. Where the hell does this come from? What is the wiring in somebody's head that makes them want to abuse kids? Now, at this time, I still really hadn't gotten easy with my I'll never get easy with my trafficking history, but I was still working with the homeless population, and I was seeing predatory behavior, of course, on the street. I've seen kids who had been kicked out of the house, similar to me. The LGBTQIA population was especially represented, and I started to learn more about that population, which had been sort of a closed country to me. This went on, and I thought, okay, I'm headed in the right direction. I must be. Things are working out. So one day, Jim Withers called up and says, I got a place on a Operation Safety Net street team. Are you still interested? And I said, I'll be there in an hour. And so that night, I started out on the street with one of their street teams, and the guy I was working with, Mike Sallows, co-founder of Operation Safety Net, after a couple hours, he says, you've done a lot of this before. And I said, yeah, I have. He says, you know how to talk to these people? And I said, yeah, I can.
From the other side, yeah.
And so I told him my background, and he says, this is going to be great. I can finally do work with somebody. I don't have to sort of ease into, like, these are homeless people. This is what you don't say. This is what you don't do.
Right.
You don't stand over them, look down on them, kind of thing. So it worked out really well. And to this day, I'm still with Operation Safety Net as a clinical volunteer. A friend of mine in, am I hogging the microphone?
No, keep going. Keep going.
Okay, sorry. Yeah.
This is amazing.
I tend to get preachy sometimes, so shut me up.
I want you to.
Okay.
Your story's why we're here.
A year ago, a friend of mine who was master's program in Pitt School of Public Health, and I sat down, and he was very interested in street medicine, said, hey, you know, they keep trying to do this at the med school here, and every year they get a street medicine program going, and it lasts a year, then the kids get into the third year rotations, and no one ever sees them again. And I said, yeah, I know. What do you want to do about that? So we decided we would start a street medicine program at Pitt, but we didn't have it at the med school. We started at the med school. We involved public health, dentistry, pharmacy, physical therapy, occupational therapy, law, social work, and I probably left out a few. We hit every and public health, and we hit every major department, and the response was a tidal wave of support.
That is awesome.
And it was like, whoa. So the street medicine at Pitt program is like huge now, and it's an established rotation for a number of the schools up there. So we have more than enough interested students we can take out on the street and say, okay, this is a different kind of medicine. This is not what you're going to see in exam rooms or interview rooms. We're taking you out on the street into their room. Okay, we're in their house. Mm-hmm. We're interviewing them on their terms, and it's been a great experience. We've had medical residents who have done 4 years of medical school who are now doing specializations come out and say, I had no idea. You know, this is right out the front door on the streets of Fifth Avenue, Forbes Avenue here. I had no idea these people are right here, and they have an entirely different medical
experience. Are they, I don't mean to interrupt, are they,
sure.
the people that the homeless that you're dealing with, are they apprehensive? Are they, you know, is it an open arms thing? They see, you know, you talk to them, they allow you to examine. Is it an open arms thing? Are they defensive? Or, I mean, what are you getting?
Across the board.
Yeah, how do you approach them
with
this?
Most of them who've been on the street for a while know me. So, I mean, we call this a bridge of trust that we build. And, but of course, and I can tell you from my own personal experience, being on the street, someone comes up to you and says, "Hi, I want to help you." And I can remember what my response back then would be, if I said anything. I'm on the spectrum, so back then I didn't really talk at all. That was a harsh development in my life, getting to talk. And see, now you can't shut me up.
Well, that's another conversation we'll get into here.
And some, even after they've known us, still don't want anything to do with us for a variety of reasons. And the fact is, some people living on the street are very comfortable. They have a routine. One of the more common factors of life on the street is you know what you have to do every day to survive. And for example, in my case, when I was on the street, I had a lot of tunnel vision. It was, I have to do this. Hopefully I will see tomorrow. If I don't bring home enough money, the guy's going to beat me up again, and I might not see tomorrow. That kind of really focuses you. I mean, all the other things.
Yeah, 100%.
Get your attention.
Yeah,
Right.
I am getting back to your question in sort of a roundabout way.
That's
It's okay. Take your time.
And, you know, the other kids my age, I wasn't in school, obviously. They're talking, I guess they were talking about proms or school dances or who they're going out with. I was thinking about,
Survival.
is this guy going to beat the shit out of me?
Survival, yeah.
Right.
By the way, how are we on F-bombs?
Nick's a good editor, so
Nick's a
don't worry
good
about it.
editor.
You tell,
Yeah,
you
he's
tell
a-
your story. We're here to listen.
Okay, I have to choose my audiences because sometimes I get really raw and I can see people in the audience sort of going. So I don't want to do that here, so I'll watch my language. When you talk about street,
This is a very raw story. I mean, the subject is raw, right?
Yeah.
It's powerful.
I've been so desensitized to the topic that I tend to just go on and on about horrible situations, and you can see people getting appropriately, repelled by it, and I understand that.
It makes people uncomfortable.
Well, yeah,
And it's amazing what you grew accustomed to.
yeah, and it's sad that people do become accustomed to it.
Right. We adapt. That's what humans do.
Yeah, and for example, my daughter, I have a daughter and a granddaughter, which has also sensitized me to this trafficking thing.
Sure.
And in a very personal way, very paranoid. She doesn't want to hear a word about it.
I was going to ask you, does your daughter know your story?
Yes. Yeah. My husband knows my story. That was kind of funny, the way we got around to that. But I'll leave that out. I'll just say he's an ex-cop, and he knew something had gone on in my life. And when he asked me to marry him, I said, "Well, we got to have a talk."
Yeah.
And yeah, that set him back a bit, but couldn't get rid of him. Anyway, yeah, people on the street tend to be very defensive. I mean, their life is very vulnerable. It's very fragile. There's a lot of mental issues that you have to break through on the street. And as I mentioned a moment ago, a lot of paranoia.
Sure.
About, like, what does this guy want from me? Who are they? They're going to try and help me. And the second thing that happens a lot, and this is one thing I have to warn the students about, is people make promises. Oh, I'm going to help you. Oh, I want to help you. This is what I'm going to do for you. And they never follow through.
Sure.
And this is one thing I learned early on the street is, yeah, show me the money, literally, kind of thing. And sometimes that didn't happen, much to my regret. And people don't follow through on the promises, so you live on the street, you don't expect much. If it happens, nice. If someone shows up with a sandwich, hey, at least I'm going to have lunch today, kind of thing. But yeah, and especially the students, some of these students are this is a fresh experience.
Sure.
And they go out there like, what's it like? And we had a few mishaps starting out with this. We took a team downtown, and they got very curious what was going on in Cherry Way, and we had to drag them out of there saying, we're leaving right now. And they said, oh, why? I said, there's a drug deal going down. We can't be here.
Sure.
And they said, oh, where was that? And it's like, get out of here.
Yeah, let's go.
So For some, it's a very worthwhile education. Like, yeah, there is this other world, this looking glass world that's out there. It's all around. I mean, it's like trafficking. It's all around. But it's not easy to see sometimes. So,
Well, first of all, you know, God bless you. You have more than turned your life around, right? So you went from being a young teenager on the spectrum, on the street, homeless, to a PhD program at Pitt and giving back and helping, coming full circle and helping people that look like you, like your youth.
Yeah, how's this
Right.
not on the silver screen?
I mean, this is.
how
no,
is
exactly.
this
Your life,
yeah,
your
this
life
is
is a movie. It's
Right.
at very least a TV series.
Oh, it is.
And I don't. All kidding aside, I can't tell you. I'm enthralled listening to this story and the fact that there are very few people, for lack of any other, to coin a cliche, born with a silver spoon in their mouth that could have accomplished what you did academically. Coming from, you spent your high school years on the street, right? So you had to reinvent yourself, like, to get your life back. And what I'd like to ask Maggie is, I would think that Becky's story is at the extreme, right? But then listening to you, it's really not. There's a lot of Beckys out there that have lived this story. So have you encountered personally anybody that has been at that level of I don't want to say, I guess it's abuse, for lack of a better term, to being homeless and all of the things that she has overcome?
I mean, a lot of our clientele is coming in. They're focused on their domestic violence situation and kind of moving on from that. And I think there's human trafficking and all kinds of things in homelessness kind of enthralled in that. And I'm sure we've seen things close to that. I don't know if everything's, everyone's situation's so different, I guess. That's the way to put it. So it's not like, I don't want to compare. I think, does that make sense?
It does. No, it doesn't. And that's kind of not where I was going with that, but I understand. Because I think that, we're all unique individual beings, but yet that thing that makes us unique also makes us the same.
Yes,
if that makes sense, right? So we have that humanity in common, and it's always amazed me. And I'll relate a story to you could probably relate to. My oldest granddaughter, who was about 3 years old at the time, loved parades. I took her to Pittsburgh one day for the St. Patrick's Day parade. Okay, just her and I, had her on the shoulders. We're walking around, and so parade's over, and we're walking back to the car, and we're going down the street, and there was a gentleman who was homeless. He was on the sidewalk next to a dumpster. And being a child and being curious, she asked me about it. So, I mean, how do you explain that to a 3-year-old, right? So I'm stumbling and stambling and bumbling, and I'm trying to explain to her. So she insists on doing, like, again, from a 3-year-old brain, she wanted to go to McDonald's and get him a Happy Meal, right? So I go and I do it. And so we're walking back there, and I'm petrified. Because, like you said, I don't know how to approach this gentleman, right? I don't know his story. I don't know if he's going to be violent. I don't know if he's going to cry. I don't know if, I don't know what, I have this child with me, right? So the education piece, where I'm going with that is this education piece that, I like to consider myself, I've been in the engineering business for a long time, myself, 40 years, although I didn't go as far education-wise as you did. And I'm going to get back into that a little bit, because that is impressive, right? Because I'm a civil engineer. I moved dirt around. So the stuff you did is like next level. But so the education piece, and Maggie, this is for you as well. I don't think there's enough of that out there, right? And especially there's not enough Beckys out there who are willing to sit in a situation like this or stand in front of a group and tell their story, because it is a very raw story that just rips you open, right? So how do we encourage that? How do we find the way forward, and what can we do as citizens, as concerned citizens, to help organizations like yours, like the district attorney, like Southwest Pennsylvania Human Services? How can we help to get this education out there?
everything is just, it's being aware and it's telling the stories, and it's making people aware that this does happen
Right.
in their community and what it looks like. Because again, even with domestic violence, people have an image of what that is, and they think mainly physical abuse, and we all know that's not the case.
Right.
There's financial abuse, there's verbal and emotional abuse, there's technology abuse, there's all these things. So it's like, number one, just getting the word out that there's these different types of abuse that occur. I think that being somebody who stands up to people who joke about things like this, that's a big one. So especially, you know, we do a lot of male engagement, not that men are not victims of domestic violence.
absolutely.
We know that,
Absolutely.
but predominantly it isn't, it's women who are abused. So we reach out to men's groups, and, you know, things like when you see somebody making light of this situation, like, step up and say, no, that's
Right.
not a funny thing. That's not a joke. These things really happen. And we encourage starting young with this kind of education. We go into schools and teach kids about things like as simple as, you know, how to regulate your emotions and learn from them, and knowing that they're okay. And whether you're a boy or a girl or whoever, it's okay to be sad, it's okay to cry, all the way up to working with high school and college students in dating violence. So education is big, and the more people that can get on board and spread the word that it's not okay, and that there are services that are out there that people can get for free,
Right.
that's going to help. That's going to make a difference.
And I think that just from our conversation so far, you and Rich, all of you, need to be in every high school in southwestern Pennsylvania talking to kids, because, you know, I would think that I hear so many people, and we've all done it. I've done it myself. Oh, my life is terrible. I don't know how I'm going to make it, you know. And then you hear this, and it's like, okay, I just want to smack myself in the head right now, because I can't even relate to what it took for you to get from there to here today, right? I can't relate to it. I'm not going to lie to you. I can't even fathom the struggle, the effort that it took, what it took for the intestinal fortitude, so to speak, for you to rise above that and do what you've done.
Beck, I apologize.
No, don't.
Did you, this is a little bit personal. Did you?
This whole thing's personal.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I can, as far as relating to it.
Yeah, go ahead.
What was your defense mechanism as a teenager? What was your defense mechanism? How did you cope with it to where you compartmentalized it and said, okay, I'm doing this, and this is what I'm going to do? What was your defense mechanism for it? Because I had my own defense mechanism for it, for violence, for domestic violence,
Yeah.
and my own coping mechanism. What was your coping? How did you compartmentalize that?
Well, as Maggie noted, we all have our own stories, and everybody's case is different. As I have mentioned, I was on the spectrum, so especially as a kid, I didn't talk much. I didn't talk back at all to anybody. I had a lot of tunnel vision. I would focus on something, and basically that would be it. I mean, it was almost like I was going into a catatonic kind of thing. So when I had this guy who says, okay, I know what you've been doing on the street. You're going to go back out there and do it again and bring home the money if you want to have this roof and food. And
Now, was this somebody that was known to you?
I didn't know. I'd seen him on the street. He was just a guy. And I want to interject here, just to break a stereotype. He was white. All the guys who raped me, beat me up, all of them were white. And this is a stereotype I have to break every time I do a public presentation, because someone will inevitably come up and whisper to me, I bet they were all black. And it's like, none of them. And it's just the way Buffalo was at that time.
Right.
But
The man who is responsible for it, was he ever prosecuted?
no. No.
Nothing. He got nothing.
No. I escaped. I want nothing to do with him. I wanted nothing to do with him. There's another story about my encounter with him a little later on, and that's how this happened. Now, I can't waste time. I can't waste my energy. I can't. My soul, I can't waste it revisiting that. I did have a prosecutor saying, hey, you got all this evidence, we've got police reports supporting your story. Let's go ahead and prosecute. And it's like, do it without me. I don't want to be part of this. I want to move on with my life. I've wasted too many years already.
Sure.
That's hard. That's got to be hard to do.
And it's understandable from that perspective. Somebody puts themselves in your shoes. I mean, to go back and relive that after you've escaped from it. And to me, escape is the word. You didn't get out of it. You escaped from the situation.
I was helped out. I mean, it's for that 1 second in life where you make that choice. I basically was a relative, and I'll leave her out of the story, but she pulled up a couple times. She saw me on the street above and said, "What the hell are you doing out here?" And it's like, go away. Don't bother me. Go away. Because, if I'm not doing business, I'm going to get beat up. But she did show up again and then kicked the car door and says, "What? Get in the car." And that 1 second changed the rest of my life from oblivion to a chance to have a future. I jumped in the car.
Had you not get in that car, do you think
I'd
you
be
would
dead.
be here
No. My name would have been long erased from anything. And that scares me today because I occasionally I get into that sort of thought track. Like,
How many children didn't get in the car?
yeah,
How many children did not take that car ride? Did
Yeah.
not get in that car?
yeah, or had the opportunity,
Or had the
And
opportunity.
passed it. Yeah,
even
yeah, had-
get in
yeah.
the car, and it's like, what if I hadn't? And I better use that opportunity now to try and do something, with the gift that was given to me.
Sure.
I think that's a big thing too, is making sure, trying to get the word out, like, of all of these opportunities that are there, because people just, like we were
Right.
talking about education, they just don't know, like even like the safety net operate, people don't know about these things, and there are people that are there to help and want to help.
Well,
Yeah.
and I've lived in the Pittsburgh area my entire life. I work in Pittsburgh just about every day. My office is in Pittsburgh. My day job. I'd never heard about this until you just said it.
Really,
And so maybe it's shame on me. I wasn't paying attention,
shame on Jim Withers.
right? Or shame on Jim Withers for not getting it out there and
Because we
and-
have reporters
and beating
with us
his
all the
chest.
time.
Yeah, but I and I'm sure you did, and I'm sure that it's really more me just being somewhat having again that tunnel vision, and having a job and having children and all of those things, and you think you're paying attention and you're being engaged in your community, but there's things like that slip by and just brush by you on the street, right? That you don't realize, but that is wow.
Maggie made a really good point about bringing this into the schools, and it's a difficult topic because how do you talk about a very broad topic
It is
to school kids?
And you're so right. I mean, that's always like where you have to start, and that's again why we start with things that aren't necessarily about abuse per se, and it's just kind of getting into how do you treat others and how do you respect others and things like that, and then moving it up age appropriate, in the classrooms,
and I think even just the to educate kids on the homelessness piece without the abuse, to let them know how easy it is to end up there. It's not bad people.
No.
It happens to good people. It can happen in the best families.
One bad medical bill can put people out on the street, and I have dealt with a number of people over many years who have been out there sitting under a bridge, and they look like, they're clean, they're well, clean cut, and they're going, I still can't believe how this happened, but I've got nowhere to go.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I sit down next to him and I say, oh, well, let's talk about that. But I do have a funny story about talking to kids about it. My 14-year-old daughter, I figured she was of an age, and I figured she's going to see a bit of what I do out on the street. Proactively, what I used to do, obviously. So I said, Kelly, hey, I'm going out on street rounds tonight. You're coming with me. Oh, no, I don't want to talk to these people. Oh, my God, no. Homeless men. Ah. And, blah, 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 blah. All the way in the car, all the way to the north side, all I'm hearing is, I don't want, how can you do this to me? These guys are awful. They're going to do this, that. I was like, well, no. I hear this all the time. It was a decent night. She interacted. She talked with some of the gentlemen we were working with, some of the ladies we were working with. And on the way home, it was quiet. So we're driving back, and I said, well, what do you think? She says, that was amazing. These guys are really cool. And I said, oh, you want to come out with me again? She said, oh, well, no, I don't want to do that.
Let's not get carried away.
Yeah. But she says, I had no idea. And now, coming that from a 14-year-old, it was
Right.
like, I did make an impression. And since then, she's always expressed, verbal sensitivity.
Sure.
When I bring the topic up, and it's like, so
Sure.
this can work. I took my pre-med advisor out there twice, and she was cool because she knew some of the people. And
Yeah.
I said, I just want you to know what I'm doing out here. She says, I get it.
What is the volume that we're dealing with in southwestern Pennsylvania? What are we talking about here? What kind of numbers? I mean, ground numbers. What are we talking about?
People try to quantify the homeless situation, and it's nebulous. It's a very dynamic population. People couch surf like I used to do when I was on the street, which means you're living in somebody's house for a while, taking up space,
Sure.
sharing their food, but during the day you're back out on the street panhandling or doing what you're doing. Some people live out on the street all the time. Some people are kicked out periodically. The family takes them back in for holidays, and then, when the Christmas spirit is evaporated, they're back out on the street. So this is a very hard population to quantify. And, we get figures from the city now and then, like, well, we have 3,281 homeless people.
And it's triple.
And it's like, okay.
Where'd that number come from?
It's
Did
a
you take
number.
census? Yeah.
And they do take census, and they use us sometimes to go out and do these point of contact surveys, which are like,
Really? Yeah.
it's like, we don't even have to walk. We'll just sit down and, yeah, it looks right. For now, for this moment, for this
Yeah.
hour.
Right.
It's a growing population, especially rent assistance has disappeared. A lot of people who were shacking up with each other are now back out on the street. With the economy the way it is and going, we're going to see more and more people out on the
I
street.
think I agree.
And it's not an isolated problem. It feeds into the economy. It feeds into a whole lot of other social factors that are going on. But we are seeing an increase. If you go downtown underneath the Grant Street, by Grant Street, right underneath the entrance ramp to the Parkway, there's a wall down there that has a whole line of plaques that gets bigger every year. And I was there when that first plaque was put up, and I know too many of those names because these are the names of people who have died on the street in Pittsburgh. And now my question is, we're in Pittsburgh, and I know the technology that goes on here because I developed some of it.
Sure.
This is one of the high-tech cities of the world. This
Absolutely.
is world-class medical
We're
facility.
blessed to have that.
Yeah, this is an awesome city. I'm working both sides of the street now. Why is it I can go into any homeless camp and see UPMC in the distance, and why are people dying on the street and under bridges in our city?
I would love to find the answer to that question.
Yeah.
Because
That's a deep question. It has
it's
a
a
lot
deep,
of roots.
it's a powerful question.
Yeah. Why is it I walk into a camp in the middle of the winter and I'm trying to get Joe to wake up and he's dead? Empty bottle of vodka next to him, and he is hypothermic dead. How does that happen? I mean, why does it happen?
This is 2022, 2022,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I'm 62 years old. I've been around a little bit, and
Kids these days.
but it's but at the end of the day, how is it still happening?
Yeah.
How and it doesn't seem like it has gotten any better. It's I just don't understand. And one thing that you said I can relate to is one medical bill away, right?
Yeah, it is.
In the cost of healthcare, we can take this conversation there very, very quickly, and it's and that's applicable to all of us, right? Anybody that's ever been sick or had to have any kind of procedure understands the cost of healthcare in this country is outrageous. Not to mention that, you can barely afford a gallon of gas these days, right? All those conversations are all tied to this homelessness conversation.
And trafficking.
Right?
And trafficking.
And trafficking.
Yeah. You see this footage. We're talking about it here, where it's hitting us here. But you see this footage. If you look at anything, from what is it, right outside of Kingston, right outside of Philadelphia, to California, and it's not hidden. This is this is out in the open. This is a problem. Like Jamie said, if we had the answers, obviously we wouldn't be sitting here. We would be. But how does something like this happen? I'm not I know it sounds redundant and
But it's so
repetitive.
easy for people to slip through the cracks.
Yeah,
is.
I mean, it really is.
not just one or two or three people. These are tens of thousands of people in every
Sure.
city.
Especially the kids. And you think,
Yeah.
kids, well, parents going to take care of the kids. No, I have rescued one 10-year-old kid I rescued right off the street in April several years ago. And she was barefoot, but her parents had traded her for a supply of Suboxone and needles.
10 years old.
10 years old. And I'm standing here with her in my hand at, 10
Traded her for
Traded her. She was a commodity to be traded.
Oh, dear God.
And I'm calling CYF at 10 o'clock at night saying, I'm holding the hand of a 10-year-old out here on such and such a street. And of course, the question comes back, was she in immediate danger? It's like, yeah.
You think?
And my next call was to a detective I know on Pittsburgh Police who is really good on these cases. And he said, don't move. It's like, thank God somebody's listening.
Yeah.
But, I mean, yeah, you have the homeless situation, but you also have the economics driving the trafficking, like to the point where some parents think it's okay. Well, I got 3 kids, so I'm going to put a couple to work.
Gee.
And that sounds harsh, but it happens.
And it's a harsh world. I mean, and we live in very chaotic and difficult times, right? Our society, particularly in this country, that's all I can speak to, has become very angry and very violent. And,
Very violent.
all of it. I mean, look at these ridiculously horrific mass shootings that we're having, right? And again, you're targeting our most vulnerable population, right?
Students, kids.
Children who are defenseless, who are unarmed, who are our most vulnerable. And when you think about when you got out on the street, you were a child, right? You were a child. You were vulnerable, and that I can see even my own grandchildren, how easily that could happen. It's actually frightening. It's intimidating and it's frightening.
Now, we have 2 different demographics here, though, that we're dealing with. We're dealing with what's out on the street, the violence that's out on the street, the homelessness and whatnot. You're dealing with domestic violence in a home with sometimes...
Possibly, yeah.
Possibly. But now, would you say more often than not?
Yes,
Okay.
more often than not.
So it's
yes.
in a home with 2 parents or one parent and a step parent, which was my situation. And these children being out on the street and dealing with it out on the street, when you have a predator like you had, who is keeping you there with fear and with violence, then you have this demographic inside the home where the child is being cared for. They have clothing, they have food, they have internet, they may even have Xbox, cell phones, and they are still being emotionally and physically brutalized
Yeah.
on a daily basis.
Or trafficked.
Or trafficked.
And it gets to that acceptance piece.
Yeah,
right?
and how is this, what are you guys, how does this come to you? How are you guys being proactive on, is there any way to be even proactive on this, except for to get the outlets, to get the feelers?
So, again, to get our information out there is how we are proactive. When we're talking about women and men and who are experiencing domestic violence, we want to empower them to make the decision to seek out services. This needs to be their decision. They've been controlled for a long period of time. Now, when there's children involved, obviously we are mandated reporters. Anything we hear about this, we make reports automatically. So, if a mother or father comes to us and there's been abuse to their child, we can then assist them. If we do hear word of it while we're out in schools or whatnot, again, we're mandated reporters, we would make that report.
Sure.
If that kind of explains, where you're coming from. But ideally, our goal is to say, you have been in a situation that has been controlling as long as you've been in it. What can we do to help you make a decision that's best for you? What do you want us to help you with? What do you not want us to help you with? How can we empower you to become independent again and kind of get to a safe place?
Yeah, interesting. I get it.
Yeah.
Well, Becky, to you, when you're out on the street, because you live this, okay, you are a survivor of human trafficking. Are you more sensitive to that? Can you recognize that in people?
Yeah. Pick a nice summer day, walk down Smithfield. you know, it happens. I run into cases which are obviously, this kid, what is this kid doing? And this kid is not supposed to be here with this guy doing what she's doing.
Right.
Sometimes it's not so obvious, but sometimes it's right in your face. You go over on the north side, East North Street, for example, used to be notorious. And these areas have cleaned up, but then you know enough people on the street that you hear,
Right.
Where the new hotspot is.
yeah, where do we go now?
Right.
Who do we talk to without, you know, how are we going to get some real information?
Sure.
And you hopefully you can interact with law enforcement and say, here's what we've heard, you know, and it's been verified. I have gone, I have looked, I have seen, and I'm not going to interfere, but here's what you have the information, do with it, you know, work
Sure.
it.
So you would not insert yourself into that situation physically, for example.
If you had to.
I have.
Yeah. If
I
you had
have.
to.
That doesn't surprise me.
I have. And yeah, it has gotten dicey, and I don't recommend that anybody who has not been trained to deal with certain situations to do this. But there have been some times where it has been like, if I let go of this kid, they're going to vanish. And that has
It's imminent danger, so
and
to
that
speak.
happened, and this kid's coming with me. That's the way it's going to be. You know,
good for
I'm
you.
immediately on the phone to CYF, immediately on the phone to 911, saying, here I am, here's the situation, I'm not moving.
I agree with you. You do have to be super careful when you intervene with children because, again, if the channels send the child back to the parents or whatnot, and it goes for even
It's just a cycle.
adults, it
Yeah.
is, and it's like, what's going to be their experience when they do have to return home? If they do have to return home. So it's, you know, there are situations where I think you absolutely can, and there's situations where you're thinking kind of proactively, I guess, in a sense, like, if I do this, what's the next step? What's going to happen? When is this going to, will this affect this person at a later time and make it worse?
Do you think that is part of, and this probably both of you guys, even though they're children, they see that end game. If I come back, if I reach out for help, and in 30 days, 90 days, 120 days, whatever the system deems, you know, the allotted amount of time, if I end up back, I'm dead.
I
I'm
wouldn't have
dead.
gone with anybody. I mean, I did try to go back home a couple times, and it was like a revolving door, basically. It didn't work. We didn't have many social services back when I was out on the street.
Right.
Going to the police was just like, are you crazy?
Yeah,
They were-
yeah.
Plus, they tended to stay more or less out of that area anyway, so they were not a huge presence, but I wouldn't have, well, I wasn't really talking to anybody, but I certainly wouldn't have talked to a cop. I was afraid sometimes to go to the emergency room in the local hospital, even though I probably should have gone, just because I'm afraid they're going to call the police.
Right.
And I'm going to get locked up for prostitution, which wouldn't have happened. Well, maybe it wouldn't have happened. Maybe it would have back then, but I don't know. Not something I gave a lot of thought to. But, you know, what the kids are seeing, what the adults are seeing, what the caretakers are seeing, these are all different things. I mean, the kid, again,
It's different perspectives.
yeah, a kid's got to like, what's going to happen to me now?
Right. They're more in the moment.
Yeah. And, yeah, I had on a north side camp, I came across she was about 15 years old, pre-trans girl, beautiful girl. And I didn't know until I was taking history, and then she sort of interjected. I mean, she was all beat up, and she was in there with a friend in this camp, and I was taking a history and developing this sort of rapport that was going along well, and then she just sort of set aside, I think he liked me better when I was a boy. And I was like, and I still couldn't see it, but you know, it's like we gotta get you out of here. And I waited. I wanted to make sure we had a place to take her since she was underage. And I said, are you going to be safe here tonight? I talked to her friend, is she going to be safe here? And tried to make sure there was a minimal support structure available, again called CYF. Tried to explain the situation to him. I came back the next night, and shortly after I'd spoken to her, she'd vanished. I mean, she got into a car and was gone, never seen again. So I don't know what the situation was, but to this day I'm going, what else could I have done? What could I have done better? Should I have just stayed with her till somebody from CYF or the police showed up, or
Now, CYS and CYF, two different,
same thing?
same thing,
Different county.
different county.
Different county, yeah. Child Youth Family, Child Youth Services.
Okay.
As a mandated reporter, I have to call. I mean, I don't have to be persuaded. I will call
Right,
on the slightest
right.
suspicion.
Right.
But you get cases where it's like, what could I have done? And the fact is, at the time, she says, I'm okay here. My friend's taking care of me. I feel pretty safe here, even though it's like in the middle of a homeless camp. I mean, that's your relative safety. Okay, I get it.
Wow. Wow. And that's, I mean, no human, let alone a child, should have to do that.
People who kick their kids out for that kind of thing, it's like, what kind of parents are you? I mean,
And that happens a lot.
a lot.
People can't relate to it. They can't face it, right?
Yeah, like I said, there are a lot of LGBTQIA services in town, specifically for that population, and I keep a list now, so I can.
Right.
And I have tried to have numbers like, hey, can I call you at 3 a.m. if I'm doing a rescue and there's a kid, who's a sexual or gender minority, and can you help me get resources so this kid doesn't have to spend the night out here? And kind of closed the door after the horse left on that one with that
Yeah.
girl. But I made a call on that one. So
Well, but you did. I mean, you did what you had to do in the moment, right? So I mean, and that's all you can really do.
yeah, I mean, I did call CYS.
It's a tough call. It's a
Yeah.
tough call, and I'm sure that you have a lot of those kind of stories that you carry with you, largely because of you lived that and how you got to here. But I mean, I wish there were more of you out there doing what you're doing, and because when you think about what would you say, and I don't want to put you on a spot, but when you think about the homeless population, that demographic, and you had mentioned race, right? And
Yeah.
a lot of people. What would you say is the demographic of the homeless population in Pittsburgh? Is it predominantly white? Is it predominantly male?
Mostly male.
Okay.
Women tend to have ability to get shelter a little better for one reason or another.
Right. Unfortunately, for one reason or another.
Yeah, been there.
Right.
Race, hard to say. I'd say we do see a lot of black guys out on the street. I'm a little biased on this because my birth family is from the Ganawagga Mohawk Indian Reserve near Montreal, and I was adopted at birth by a white family. So I'm 3/4 blood by Mohawk, culturally zero. So
Yeah.
I did reconnect later in life with my family up there.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah, it was interesting. My great aunt is a language teacher, and she was, you should learn your language. And it's like, who the hell am I going to speak Mohawk to in any county? But she had a point. She does have a point. So, believe it or not, there is a higher than average indigenous population on the street, and by and large, most of them are very happy being out there.
Really?
We have found. I don't know if it's something in our native blood that makes us, hey, we can survive out here.
Freedom.
Live like our ancestors, kind of thing.
Sure.
I don't know. I can't say it. But demographic, again, like the numbers, is hard to really pin
Right.
down and give you,
Sure.
there's 63% this or that.
It's
What I see is mostly black males. When I say mostly, it's not like it's a huge over percentage.
Okay.
I see who I see.
Sure. Right. Right. And I'm sure it's different just about every night you go out there. Okay. So, you had mentioned just a moment ago that you're writing a book, or you have written a book, and you're looking for a publisher.
Yeah, the book has two purposes. Number one, tell my own story, and as
Okay.
Maggie pointed out, everybody has their own story.
Sure.
This is my story. The other point is not so much as an instruction manual, but to put it in context of what's going on today. Because my story is a number of years ago, but I'm trying to put it in context of the trafficking situation today, how people are responding to it, and what kind of resources in general that people can look for. So hopefully it's useful in, well, this is how one person, this is how she lived on the street. And in context of what, wow, things haven't changed in so many years, and there are constants in the problem.
Sure.
And again, as Maggie mentioned, the big thing's awareness.
Right.
Just tell the story. There are lots of books out there that survivors have written. Some good, some a little like, really? But I've passed the chapters around to people who work as survivor advocates. I've sent them to local and federal law enforcement who have read them and given me their feedback. And it's very encouraging. I want to get this thing out.
Good. Yeah. I think it's a story that must be told, and I'm very grateful and humbled by you coming on the show and talking to us about it. It's nothing short of heroic, the journey that you've taken, and God bless you.
It's taken a while to write because sometimes I have to relive. There's some things I just don't remember, thankfully, but there are
Right.
other episodes that were, wow. And my husband, God bless him, who was very patient with me at the beginning. As an ex-cop, he read a couple of these chapters. He goes, "I can't read this. My God!" And it's like,
As a former policeman,
who used to respond to horrible domestic
right.
events, and he'd read this and he goes, "This, wow." There's one chapter I get very descriptive on a gang rape, and that's how this happened. And what's the point of holding back?
Well, there is none. And again, that's the part of a story. If you hold anything back, then you're not accomplishing what you tried to do. The whole purpose of telling your story, as you said, if even one child is rescued, is prevented from being out on the street because they read your story, it's worth it.
One law enforcement group that I work with, had it, and they took the chapters. I actually said, "Can we duplicate these and pass them around to the other people?" And I said, "Okay,
There you
sure,
go.
I guess." Because it's like when I said, "Can I watch the F-bombs here?" Because when I do talk publicly to other groups, I tend to get pretty graphic. Because again, if I hold back,
Sure.
It's not you telling your story.
I'm cheating people.
Yeah, if you hold back,
Yeah.
you're cheating yourself. It's
Right.
not you telling your story.
That's exactly right. No, I get it, and I definitely think it's a story that needs to be told, and we need to do what we can to help you get this book published. That's
Wow, thanks.
that's,
Yeah, that helps.
that's important. I know some editors. I know some people that do that, and we'll see. We'll put it out there and see if we can't make some connections.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I've had some, during my public presentations, I've had older cops come and say, "I don't believe you said that." It's like,
I didn't say it, I lived it.
it's like,
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the hard part.
I'm
Yeah, you
saying-
didn't just say it, you lived it.
it's like, it's the way it was.
Wow. Well,
Yeah.
thank you again for being here and
Okay,
sharing.
thanks
with
for
us.
listening.
It's very powerful. Maggie, any parting thoughts from you? You want to give us some information about your organization?
So all of our services are provided to anyone who would like them, men, women, children of a certain age that we
Free of
can.
charge, right?
Free of charge.
you
Everything's
go.
free.
That's great.
All of our services are confidential as well. So just to give people peace of mind. We have a 24/7 hotline number. It's 1-800-791-4000. So we're always there.
Well, thank you so much, Maggie. We appreciate you and
Thank
your
you.
organization. And Becky, again, thank you so much for both of you coming in and sharing your stories. And this is an incredibly powerful and important issue that is not only impacting our country but also our region right here on Main Street.
Yep.
And we need to be very conscious of this. So, and I think we're going to try to take this forward and do what we can to be a positive impact and influence on this. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for putting it out there.